everybody. Thanks for tuning into the channel today. Got a question from a viewer about interested in low tuning his guitar. He was in response to my video about why many 12-string guitarists down tune their guitars, and he was talking about the possibility of putting a baritone 12-string set on his 12-string, and he was asking about the wisdom of doing that, whether that's a good idea or not. And so I threw together some notes here real quick. I'm going to use my iPad over here off to the side and just kind of go through some things, and maybe I'll be kind of, smart and put some little graphics over here on the side so you can kind of see. And let's talk about what does it mean by a baritone guitar. A baritone guitar is usually tuned like a fourth or fifth lower than standard tuning, which means that your E string is going to be tuned down to like a low B, maybe a low C. Like a baritone tuning on a bass, like they have like what's called a contrabass tuning. It's tuned everything like a fourth lower. So if you tune down to like a B, then it's really deep into the low range. And many guitarists, I say many, I mean some very prominent guitarists have done this. A baritone guitar is also typified by something that's different, not just the string gauge, but it's the scale length. The scale length is what's called the speaking length of the string. That's the string, the distance between the nut and the bridge. And so that's the part of the string when you pluck the note that it's the part that rings. This part up here that doesn't ring or down below, that's not a speaking part of the string. Your standard guitar scale lengths are pretty much 24 3/4 on the short side of things. Some of your Gibson acoustics, your Gibson electrics like Les Pauls are on that end. Stratocaster electrics and most of your Asian-made acoustics today are 25 1/2, and that's a pretty standard kind of that's a longer scale length. Now, a baritone guitar is generally going to be almost an inch longer, like 26 1/2 inches. My banjo guitars, for example, are actually, they're not tuned in the baritone range, but they have the long 26 1/2 inches, a pretty standard banjo neck length as well as for this, not neck length, but the scale length for the instrument as well. So the longer scale length with heavier strings means more string tension, so you have to tune down. And those strings are especially made to be tuned down low. So you're going like B, E, A, D, up and up, and basically everything is a fourth lower. So your high E string would also be the same note as right there as the B string. So it's a low tuning. It has a lot of power to it, but you have to be careful. It lacks definition. Most of your people who play with that low tuning are going to be, they're tuned to a low B, B flat, sometimes a C, and they're going to wear finger picks and a thumb pick. Think of Pete Seeger, think of Leadbelly. Leo Kottke gets down into that range somewhat, but even those instruments, well, like Leo Kottke uses pretty much a medium 12-string set to get there. Like the strings that Leadbelly used on his Stella guitars, they were ladder braced instruments with the longer scale length, the 26 1/2 inch scale length, and they were tuned way down. And he used a silk and steel composite string, which is not like today's bronze wound strings. So let's look on the market here and see what's available real quick. We got, if you're interested in baritone strings, you have La Bella is probably your best shot at getting something that's going to be reliable, good. La Bella has a great reputation. They've been around for years. They're a little on the pricey side, but they're well known. I've played La Bella bass strings for years. I don't use them any on my guitars, but my basses, I have some La Bellas on there. So they make a set. It's the BG12. That's their basically baritone guitar 12, and the string gauge is what you want to pay attention to on this. So from the lowest, or from the lowest string pairs to the highest string pairs, your octave on your, what would be the low B string, is a 40, and then the main note, which would be like a fourth tuned a fourth below your E string, would be an 80. On a standard 12-string set like I've got here, the 9 is like, you basically have either a 9 to 42 or like a 10 to 46 set. So the heaviest string here is a 46. Huge difference between a 46 and an 80. Okay, 80 thousandths of an inch compared to 46 of an inch. Man, it's almost double the width. Then that goes up to the top strings up here to the higher strings, which like on these, this set here is a 9. They've got 15s on there, but they're tuned down to a B, so it's rather than an E. So the down tuning and the heavier gauging makes the strings less floppy despite the down tuning, but still that's a substantial string tension on them. The biggest problem you'd run into taking a standard guitar and then stringing it as a baritone is right up here, and that's the nut, because your nut slots are cut pretty much for standard strings. And if you're going to use baritone strings and you put like that 80 in that second slot right there for the low octave on your bass pair, it's not going to fit. It's not going to sit down in the track. It's going to kind of plop up on the top there, maybe get stuck, maybe get pinched. It's going to may affect your intonation, may affect the action. So you're going to have to widen that nut slot. That's not a job for the faint of heart. You want to be somebody who's skilled at doing some guitar repair to do that for you, because that's not a reversible repair. Or a reversible change on the guitar. Once you cut that nut slot, it's going to be, if it's cut for an 80 thousandths of an inch string, you're not going. You put a set of 9 to 42s or 10 to 46s back in there, then that slot's going to be too wide, and you'd have to put a new nut in or refill that somehow. So that's one caution I would caution if you're thinking about doing a baritone guitar with a standard 12 string, that you're going to have to cut that nut slot to widen those slots so those heavier string gauges can fit in there, have good intonation, not go kink, 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 kink as you're tightening up the string. It's going to take a little bit of work, and if you're not comfortable doing that, it's really easy to mess that up. The angle has to be very precise going in there, or you'll get this weird little kind of buzzy harmonic kind of thing that happens. Kind of almost sounds kind of like a sitar if you don't get that just right. So that's the labella string set. But let's look at some other options if you're looking for down tuning, but you don't want to go all the way up to a baritone range strings or have to modify your guitar. So there are some options there you can use. Okay, looking at labella, again, they make a silk and steel acoustic set, which has a 14 to a 68. That 68 is still pretty substantial, but it might fit into standard nut slots on that side. That's also a silk and steel set. You can down tune with that successfully with that string gauge, and it should sound pretty good. That is the labella, the 710-12H set. That's their heavy gauge silk and steel set. Another set you can take a look at is John Pierce. If you don't care for silk and steel strings and you want to have the more traditional feel of the bronze/brass wound kind of configuration, the John Pierce 12 string sets, they do make a medium. Let me pull this up right here. I'm on this website called juststrings.com, and where's that set there? The John Pierce. There we go. So they make a 13 to 56. I've used these before. They're good for tuning down to like a C sharp or a C. So that's close to getting the baritone range. You're only if you could tune down to C, you're just a half step off. And so you're getting that real deep, meaty kind of sound. Matter of fact, if there's an old video that's like 12 or 13 years old on my site here of me playing a song. This is long before I had beard and I had long hair and I still look like a younger man. But there was a video I did back then, around 2005 or something, and I'm tuned down to a C, and I'm using those John Pierce strings. Maybe I'll put a link in the description, and you can hear them there. Then that's on an unmodified Alvarez instrument. And so those go from a 13 to a 56. That's doable, and you don't have to modify your nut on that at all. They are a bit heavy. You'll probably have to tweak your truss rod a bit, and you might even have to lower your action a little bit, or raise it. Maybe put a shim under. That's you'll have to just kind of play around with it. There is some adjusting to do sometimes with that. So John Pierce, that's an 80-20 bronze. You can tune it down to C sharp. These are the ones that you find on the Taylor Leo Kottke signature model. Oddly enough, as huge a fan I am of Leo Kottke, I'm not a fan of his signature model, his Taylor signature model. To me, the ultimate Kottke sound was him using silk and steel strings on an old Gibson B45, his first album is really, that's the penultimate Leo Kottke tone to me. And so that's what I like to hear from him. Now his later stuff, it's a different tone. His finger style stuff without the picks, I'm like, I mean, it's good, but it doesn't have the power and stuff that I really like out of his earliest recordings. So that's some options that you have that you can look at. A couple of Labella sets, Silk and Steel, and the John Pierce sets. There used to be a brand years ago that they don't make anymore, and I have missed it terribly. D'Angelico used to have a brand that they put out there. They had a 12-string set, and their light set was basically a medium. Their medium was a heavy, and so it was you could tune those down pretty good, and they sounded really good. And they were a brass wound string, which brass wound rather than the 80-20 bronze, that sounded really good. So that's some, but they don't make those anymore. I miss those. It's just like the Martin Silk and Steels. That was my favorite 12-string strings, and they don't make those anymore, not for 12-string at least. So, and I haven't found a Silk and Steel brand that I'm really fond of, since then. The gauging is just a little bit different, a little bit off. Baritone guitar. I hope that answers some of your questions on that. Thank you for watching the channel, and check back for more content in the future. Like, subscribe, and share if you found this helpful. And we'll see you around next time. Bye.